Everybody, welcome to On the Move, a show where we share transportation sales and marketing success stories. I am Jennifer Carpus Romaine, Executive Director at the Transportation Marketing and Sales Association, which is a trade nonprofit educating and connecting marketing and sales professionals inside transportation and logistics. I'm really excited to be on the move with you today, and our special guest is Anthony Pagnotto. He is Vice President, Global Sales and Marketing at Mohawk Global. Welcome to the show, Anthony.
I'm super glad to be here today. It's always great to talk to you, Jennifer, and to support TMSA. This is a interesting thing for me to get on these podcasts and show my beautiful face. My wife says I have a face for radio, but yet here I am. So thanks for having me, and look forward to a nice chit chat today.
Well, I'm excited to have you on the show. And if people are watching on LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook, they will see your face. But if they're listening to the podcast after the fact on like Apple or Spotify or any of those places, then they'll just hear your lovely voice. So
That's
it'll be a little bit of both. I think you're lovely. But I want to talk about all of your great experience in the industry. And I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, once you're in this industry, you stay in this industry, but not a lot of people plan to be in the industry. And when I was researching you, you actually went to school and earned a BS in logistics and transportation. And then you later got a doctorate of law in international business trade and tax law. So as we said, I was like, you got a lot of paperwork there, Anthony. You got a lot of stuff going on. So I would love to kind of know what first intrigued you about logistics and kind of how you grew and you're so sophisticated with your schooling.
Well, I hate to disappoint you because I fell into this industry by accident, like everyone, right? Like so. But it's a neat story, and I'll give you the few second tour here. I went to college out of state. I was originally from down the road from our Elevate conference in Southern Louisiana. Went to the University of Tennessee for personal reasons, and I was out of state there. And it was a little expensive out-of-state tuition. And I walked to the office and said, hey, is there any way I can get in-state tuition? And they said, well, if you major in one of two programs that they don't offer in your home state, then you can come here for in-state tuition. Well, I said, well, tell me what the University of Tennessee offers that my home state of Louisiana doesn't offer. And the first thing they said was nuclear science. And I said, no. And then they said, well, how about logistics and transportation? And I said, what is that? It's in the business college. It's an up and coming area. It deals with the movement of goods. And I said, it's in the business college? They said, yes. And I said, sign me up. Little did I know that I would absolutely fall in love with the topic. University of Tennessee is a great program for logistics, transportation. And I really fell in love with the science, the math, the projections, the forecasting, and have enjoyed it ever since. The law, that was an area that I thought was going to be a long-term part of my career. And much to my mother's disappointment, I went through, had a wonderful experience, and just didn't find the passion for practicing the law and headed back to something that I'm really comfortable with. And despite the fact that I think I've put together quite a successful career in supply chain and transportation, my mother still asks me when I'm going to put that law degree to use, and it's not happening anytime soon.
But I feel like having it be over business, trade, and tax law, that has to come into play in your roles in transportation and logistics. Like that, I feel like, or at least understanding the laws and how things, especially trade type stuff, like that has to come into play, especially working for a global company now.
I contribute a lot of my success to the education that I've been blessed at, right? Through those courses of transportation logistics, you learn how to think, you learn how to write, you learn how to communicate, you learn how to make an argument, you learn different skill sets that bolster your career, and then having a good idea, right? One of the big challenges coming our way, and I don't think we're going to get in depth in this, but you talk about trends. What's going to happen with the new Supreme Court ruling that just overturned Chevron deference? Much of our transportation and supply chain rules and regulations come from regulatory agencies that have been guided by 40 years of Chevron deference, and we've seen a major change in that. So that's an area that we all need to be thinking about, how that could potentially change over the years. So yes, it's all interconnected. I wouldn't change a thing. I think it's made me who I am, and I'm thankful for the opportunities I've had over the years and the people that I've met, for sure.
And one of the things I really liked about like looking at your career and what you said, I so much of what I've learned is just from my experience. And you've had different experiences in different pockets of the industry. So what are some of those trends that you've seen and things that people should be paying attention to? You already kind of gave a sneaky peek of what one thing, but if you want to touch more on that or other things, would love to hear it.
Yeah, I've been blessed. I've been with basically two companies in my career, a very large publicly traded freight forwarder and Mohawk Global. And I've had the opportunity in my career to touch almost everything, right? From sales and account management to running an operation, to really seeing how things are done and nuts and bolts of managing files and managing shipments, working on imports, exports, air, ocean, full truckload, LTL. I've managed sales teams, I've managed branches, and with Mohawk Global, I've been a regional vice president and then have taken over the challenge of sales and marketing and driving those initiatives, both in the US and for our global growing sister company areas as well, such as Europe, Canada, and some potential opportunities in Southeast Asia. So I've got a breadth of skills and coverage that I think really help me in these conversations, which is what I keep coming back to. My favorite thing in this business, and the thing that things that I really enjoy about this business more than anything, are the opportunity to help our clients with new and interesting challenges, which crop up by the minute in this business, right? And I always think about other jobs, and there are days where I just wonder, what would it be like to go to work and kind of do the same thing every day and do it well, and then leave and hit the clock and be done and go home. And some days, you get a little envious of that, right? But the truth is, I thrive on, and I think most of my fellow transportation employees, supply chain employees, we thrive on the chaos. So I think the breadth of experience that I've been fortunate to have really contributes to some of the things that I want to talk about today when we talk about disruption. So that was a long way to get back to disruption or to actually trends, right? You mentioned trends, and I'm going to say the trend is disruption.
Mm-hmm. Right? It's a big one for sure.
And it's the fact that it's never going to change, right? Like this is the long haul. This is what we're facing. And I think there are a couple of things that have really been the predecessors for why these things have such large impacts on our industry. But if you look back 2017, right, the one that really sticks out in my mind as a show of what was to come was the Hanjin bankruptcy, right? And I remember sitting in a room and war rooming with my colleagues how we were going to get our clients freight as Hanjin vessels were getting seized in ports and freights were skyrocketing, and how we were going to get our clients cargo to their final destinations, to their customers. And the hits, and at the time the thinking was, we just got to get through this Hanjin bankruptcy challenge and then we'll all be good, right? And the truth is, we've had hit after hit after hit after hit after hit, and their impact on the trade world has grown to be much more dramatic than it would have been in years past, as we've seen substantial ocean carrier consolidation. There's far fewer ocean carriers today than when I started, and so there's far fewer companies that can pick up the slack and help support, and you have far fewer choices as a consumer of ocean freight than you did when I started in this business approximately 20 years ago. So now things like oil prices up and down, green fuel laws, IMO surcharges, retrofitting ships to help scrub their emissions, right? Environmental risks such as the drought that led to the almost emptying of the Panama Canal, or the extremely low level of the European rivers that are a major thoroughfare for container shipping. Ships stuck in the Suez, wars, political instability, right, at home and abroad, tariff battles, which cause, right, non-peak shipping and off-peak shipping demand and surges and contractions. Those all have a much larger impact on us as shippers than they used to, because there's just not as much buffer in the system. There's not as much of a shock absorber in the system. And so we start to see these wild swings in rates. We start to see cargo not making it where it's supposed to go. We see I didn't even mention COVID, by the way, as a thing. That was a thing. We had a pandemic, right?
Yeah, it was a little small thing, but I think it's something that, I mean, and feel free to touch on it, but I think that's the one that we always talk about, and everything else that you're saying is like everything that's been around it and through it and continue on after it. And so COVID isn't the only disruptor or trend or piece of life that happened that is causing disruption now. So I like all the other pieces of insight you're giving.
It's not, right? I mean, and we're continuing. We've got the U.S. East Coast labor negotiations going on with some pretty serious rhetoric from both sides that even if there isn't a strike, causes shipping patterns to change and congestion and things like that, right? And again, we've got shifts in manufacturing being driven by tariff wars. So we've got a lot of changes that a liner, a world of ocean liners and container shipping is slow to respond to at sometimes. And the truth be told, at the same time we've seen this disruption, and I'll come back and talk about COVID in a second here. We've seen the carriers and the ocean liners get much better at managing capacity and driving profitability. And so, there was a time in my career where carriers would honor one-sided rates. We had clients that would sign aggressive fixed rate deals that if the spot market went under those deals, they would move everything on the spot market, and then they would move back to their aggressive contracts when the opportunity. So we saw shippers take advantage of sort of the disorganization within the steamship line community, and as carriers, as there became fewer of them, as we talked about, and as they kind of learn how to manage their capacity better, they have some very high expectations for shippers, and that continues to be a trend that we can talk about in a moment. What I wanted to say about COVID from a trend and point of view was that I think it brought out some of the best in this country as logisticians. We were dealing with just a massive supply shortage. We were dealing with vessels out of rotation, not in the right spot. And we really saw shippers over the course, and it was a long period of disruption. We saw shippers come together as companies, and we saw supply chain and transportation have a seat in the boardroom, right? And often they were called directly to the boardroom, right? And they were asked to contribute. And we saw logisticians come together and focus on things like risk mitigation strategies, diversification of supply base, diversification of transportation routes, moving away from the idea of lowest landed cost for every item that I bring in, and building resilient supply chains. And that continues to be the trend that we need to see into the future, right? We need to see well thought out transportation planning. We need to see shippers working directly with their NVOCCs, carriers, right, to share ideas, share plans, Make sure that there's buffers for the inevitable shocks that come with the next challenge that hits the industry, because it's not a matter of if, it's when. We've been preaching these things for a long time, and we saw these things start to happen with COVID. The problem was post-COVID, we saw rates collapse, right? We saw rates collapse, and I saw some of my colleagues on the shipper side best plans and really brilliant ideas to diversify and de-risk their supply chains get thrown aside very quickly in an effort to chase the lowest landed cost out there. And then what have we seen this year? We've seen with the war in the Middle East, with the Houthis and the Suez Canal being closed, we've seen a rapid rise in freight rates, and we've seen a lot of people caught unprepared again, which is unfortunate. So those are the major trends to me, with a continued focus on risk, risk mitigation, diversification, and a move away from focusing on lowest landed cost to really de-risking the supply chain and understanding the risk tolerance for you and your client base, which is different for every single shipper. So that was long-winded.
That was a lot to unpack, but really, really great nuggets of information. And I think when we move forward and we talk about, okay, the recession, are we in a recession? Is it coming? Is it going to go? Are we in the middle of it? What do you think the freight market really can expect for the back half of 2024 and as we plan for 2025? What do you think we're actually looking at here? So
I'm glad you said freight recession, right? Like if you want to talk about recession as in economics, I think I had like one of those classes. Like I'm not the guy to answer. Apparently the definition changes by the daily anyway. But when I think about the freight recession that we've been in, and we define freight recession, break it down a little bit into its component parts, which I think are lower loads, right? Whether it's domestic trucking, LTL, whether it's ocean, whether it's air freight, there are fewer shipments, right? And we've seen margin compression, right? Extra capacity in the market, a lot of competition, as many of our competitors focus on just staying afloat, right? I don't see an immediate recovery. I don't see, and it's not all doom and gloom. I want to be clear about that, right? For me, I feel like the U.S. economy is a bit schizophrenic at the moment, and you frequently hear about the disconnect between Wall Street and Main Street. And hey, my 401k is doing really well, but I can't afford groceries, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's the reality of what many of us are dealing with. And when I talk to clients, I certainly don't get the warm and fuzzies, right? I'm not getting any clues that they're about to launch new product lines or bring in substantial new, especially in the retail sector, right? And bring in huge new volumes. We've seen some freight rush coming in order to beat some of the proposed tariffs, right? So we've seen some rush there, but I think that the volumes dry up a little bit behind that, as we can see as ocean rates are starting to come down on average right now over what they have been in the last month. So I don't get doom and gloom either, right? There was a period post-COVID, after the boom of COVID, where I was spending time in the Carolinas at some of the major furniture companies, and they said, Anthony, every single human being that wanted to buy a couch bought 2 couches during COVID, and I don't know when we're going to sell a couch again, right? And I literally saw a guy who owned his own business, who was making handmade dressers in a warehouse that used to hold thousands and thousands and thousands of pieces of furniture coming in from all around the world. So he had changed his model, and luckily he was quite the craftsman, just to get by, to making 1 or 2 handmade pieces of furniture a week, and in a large, giant, empty warehouse. I don't feel that level of doom and gloom either, right? But there's just general uncertainty. But I think as transportation professionals, as transportation sales and marketing professionals, we've got an opportunity to shine during this time. And there are things that are moving, right? Pharmaceutical moves, right? Medical moves. Mohawk Global is doing some enormous infrastructure projects right now because there's been some substantial spending on infrastructure. So there's been some major steel imports, and it's on us as transportation professionals, especially those of us in the sales and marketing realms, to get surgical. I think the hitting the market with a shotgun is less productive than really dialing in, getting surgical, identifying what verticals your organization's got competence in handling, and then getting out there and seeing of those which ones are moving. And Mohawk Global and quite a few of our competitors are having some really good luck doing that. But you've got to couple that with world-class customer service, probably lower margin expectations than you would normally have because there's a lot of other people chasing that same freight. But we can get through this as a community, I'm certain of it, and we will start to see the upside, I hope, at the end of the year, right, and into next year.
Yeah, I think like when we're thinking about how we sell and how we market, I think it's really important that, as like you said, be surgical, really think about what's moving and how you're moving, but then think about how that messaging is on that. Like, I think sometimes we lean really hard and like, we can do it all. Like, we can do everything.
Right.
Just let us do it for you. But people are like, but no, how do you move? Like, okay, for pharmaceuticals, like if you need a certain temperature in the truck to move it, like how do you accommodate that? Like, how do you make sure that you're not going to mess up all of their product and things like that? Like, I think having those conversations are really important when you are selling and when you are building the messaging, because it's great that you can do it all, but can you? And how do you, like, people don't necessarily care that you can do it all. They care what you can do for them. And so I think that's really important when we're thinking about how we're selling too, is that we're making sure like, hey, we understand that this is what you do and what you need from us, and this is how we do it.
And that's a great point. I think it's very challenging to pivot right now, right? If you don't already have incredible cold chain, processes and a network in place, you're gonna have trouble switching to cold chain just because it happens to be moving.
Right.
You don't have the network to transload and move heavy steel, right? At multiple ports around the U.S. That's going to be a very challenging thing to do just because there's a freight recession. But I promise you, most of our companies have something that they do really well that's moving, and they've really got to take the time to analyze the market, analyze their competencies, and make sure that they're focusing on that to drive revenue through what's going to be a protracted time of, again, not doom and gloom, but there's no champagne bottles opening right now. So I think we'll keep on going, right?
With that, when we talked a lot about like the heavy freight trends and what's going on, but I'm curious kind of on the other side, when we talk about technology advances and how we're utilizing technology, either sales, marketing, or just in our general logistics process, what are you embracing the most at Mohawk Global?
So I think I'm gonna make a very general statement and then we'll add on to that. But I think the promise of a technological revolution in transportation has been grossly overstated. At the end of the day, technology can't replace people, and technology can't replace expertise. The industry is too fragmented. There's too much haphazard interconnectedness. There's too much opportunity in building new links and building partners quickly, and you've got to be able to couple and decouple quickly, right? And technology is important, and so I'm going to come back and circle around to that. But at Mohawk, and where we're leading the way is through our people and through our expertise. Our clients care about the same things they cared about 20 years ago, right? And if you're a freight forwarder or a cargo broker and you haven't figured this out yet, I'll tell you right now, right? It's, will my cargo arrive on the ETA promised? Will you bother to let me know timely if it won't?
Right?
Will you invoice me on time? And will you invoice me what you said you were going to invoice me, right? And by the way, if you could do all that really well, if you could kind of cut out the amount of time it takes me to manage you by maybe getting into some exception management things with me, that would be fantastic, right? And I know there's some Fortune 100 companies out there that are bucking the trend, and they have transportation nerve centers within their headquarters with it looks like CSI or NCIS, right, with maps, and they see the hurricane and they see where their ships are going. And that exists. There's that level of complexity, but the vast majority of the clientele out there just want some simple, easy solutions, right? And our great people lead the way on that. And we've yet to see the first, not the first, but the biggest buzzword we're hearing right now is AI, right? Mm-hmm. Prior to that, it was blockchain. I've yet to see a blockchain solution implemented successfully. And that's not to say it won't be, right? There are companies and organizations that are working on some really cool things. I've yet to see an AI solution that blew me out of the water, right? I've seen some neat things. I've seen phone calls answered by AI, but again, that was very similar to me to hit one for this, hit two for this. It was just a human voice, a very nice human voice on the other end, right? More impressive, much better than my voice, right? So some cool stuff. But with the guardrails we have to build around AI to keep it from running amok. If you recall, there was I don't know if it was Google or Microsoft, but one of the big tech guys unleashed some sort of unfettered AI onto the world, and within 5 minutes, bad actors had it using profanity and saying terrible things about people. So by the time you put the guardrails around AI in our business to limit it to what you want it to focus on, it really seems to me to drive really not much further than a touch menu. Again, press 1 for imports, press 2 for exports, press 3 for customs brokerage. And so at the end of the day, our focus is on our people providing accurate and great data, right? Now, where the technology comes into place, and we've seen some really cool steps forward are on digitization of the supply chain, taking things off of pieces of paper. A lot of times we receive commercial documents, commercial invoices, and packing lists that look like they were written on a cocktail napkin, right? And we're able to scan that in and use OCR, right, to get that into our system accurately and timely so that we can provide data. And the data that we want to provide, we want to tell a story. I use the word that my boss, Mike Kuhn, a tremendous thinker in our business and really bright guy, uses, which is logistics, right? And we want to take technology and enable our team through technology, digitization, and just our know-how to provide financial insight to our company, to our clients about what they're shipping and how their costs are changing or evolving, what the impacts of new duty rates are, what the impacts of new suppliers are, going back to a sophisticated landed cost based on, so that you can get a true understanding of the impact of the decisions you make. 3-day longer transit time, what does that do to the total cost of ownership for your inventory? Those are the areas that we want to focus on. And, I continue to wade through the millions of emails and ads on LinkedIn from innovators, from people way smarter than me, who are telling me that they've invented the next thing that's going to revolutionize my life and make our business all that much better. And I am confident that I'm not going to be extinct like a dinosaur tomorrow, right? So there's still room for somebody like me who's focused on just blocking and tackling, but I'm also confident that some of these guys are going to hit some home runs, right? But there's just this deluge of technology in the supply chain with everybody focused on it right now. And I don't think we've seen the true winners or even the true concepts that are going to take things forward shake out yet. But I'm excited to watch it evolve. And and excited to get involved when the time is right for Mohawk.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and this is what I've said on a few of these shows too, because like AI is like the hot topic, and what do we do with it? But I just think what you said, you know, we're focusing on our people and how can we help them. And I think anything that we're investing in, especially when it comes to our technology, that should be like the root of what you're doing. How can you help your team get better, more efficient, do things more accurately, help the customer more? So I agree with all those things.
There's some really big companies, sorry to jump in there, but there's some really big companies in the news right now that are laying off some really talented people and betting a lot of money on AI. And they're doing that because I think they have a huge pressure from Wall Street, right, to generate ROI that may be unreasonable right now. And so we're seeing some real big bets place technology over people right now in real time. And I'll be curious to watch how it pans out, and wish everybody the best in that. And you know, as Mohawk will be there looking for good talent. If you get let go, we'll happily hire you.
Good to know. Yeah. I want to pivot a little bit and talk about you and your volunteerism, because you are you are our newest board member. You've been here for a few months here at TMSA. Well, you've been at TMSA longer, but you've been on the board at TMSA for a few months. And in that tenure of your time here, you've served on the marketing committee and have joined the finance committee. And I'm curious, like when we talk about kind of trends in the market and where you can learn things, like what has your experience with TMSA been? Why did you want to come onto the board of directors and just so excitedly sign up for so many tasks? Not just talking to me on this podcast, but all the things that you've been doing. I'm just curious about what your experience and why you think kind of embracing industry associations are important.
I don't speak for everybody here. Maybe people have a different experience than me. But I've been doing this for 20 years, right? And I still struggle to tell my wife what I do for a living. And I say that in all seriousness. And work from home, you know, when we were doing that from COVID, it really shed light upon that idea, you know, that she says, Anthony, it sounds like you have the same conversation over and over and over again. Is that all you do? And I'm like, there's a lot more to it. I promise. Like, I promise there's more to it. And I love my wife dearly, but like, you know, being in this business can be a little lonely, right? And so for me, just before we get even into the board membership or anything like that, the single most important thing that I've gotten out of TMSA has been relationships, bonds, and friendships with people who are fighting the same battles as me, that are facing the same challenges as me at work. And I can just call them up, or they can call me up, and we can just have a conversation about what's going on. And I feel camaraderie in that first and foremost. And for me, that's really important, right? That's really important part of TMSA. On top of that, you know, we have such a great group of vendors, right? Whether it's marketing support, sales support, whether it's technology. And for me, you know, I alluded to it earlier in the technology conversation. There is such a deluge of people marketing, right, their services, which, you know, we do it too. Not faulting anybody, right? Like, but for me, the opportunity to sit down and talk to some of these people one-on-one and build relationships before we're ever ready to buy their services. And know them as people, and know their ideas, and know what they're passionate about, really makes shopping for some of these services, not to mention just the generosity of the folks that help me just out of the goodness of their heart, right? But to get to know this great supplier base, I think I've told you very clearly, like, I feel like answering all of my LinkedIn messages with, I'm not going to meet with you unless you're in TMSA, and we me at Elevate, right? And that's not to be a jerk, right? That's because for me, the personal relationship is so aligned with the professional relationship, right? And there's got to be a trust factor. And so you get that from TMSA, and you feel like you're part of a group of people on a similar mission, which is fantastic. Now, that being said, for me, when I was asked to join a committee, I went into an area of weakness, right? I come from the sales side, right? And marketing is an area that I've learned and embraced over the last couple of years. And so the opportunity to work with some world-class marketers in our world and see what they're doing was really neat. See how they use HubSpot, right? See how they categorize, see how they write an email for the best response. That was really cool for me. And then just, last on that, joining the board, being part of the finance committee, where I think I have a little bit more expertise, that's just me, right? If I get value from something, my kids are all in scouts, right? So I volunteer for scouts, right? My kids are all in sports, or when I can, I volunteer for sports. And if I'm going to be in part of TMSA and reap the rewards of TMSA, then I feel an obligation to give back. And truthfully, I get back tenfold in return.
I appreciate that. I appreciate a lot of what you said. So first, I totally brought my husband and my parents to Elevate because I still don't know if my parents fully grasp what it is I do, but they definitely have a better idea now. Which you met. We went to dinner together, which
they were delightful.
They were. And then I do feel like sometimes I have the same conversation over and over. It is more complex than people would think, but I was like, and I'm sure anyone listening to mine. But yes, I feel like I give that 2-minute elevator pitch about what TMSA is many, many times all day long. So I love that. We're talking about Elevate, and you mentioned something that you wanted to talk about, which I was thinking about now, is just we are evolving in a few different ways, but one of those things is our career paths and how to embrace kind of some of the changes that are going on. And at Elevate this year, Dion Nissette from FedEx was talking about the death of a linear career path, which I think is so true. And I look at my own life, and I've just been like a ping pong ball kind of all around. But I know that was something that spoke to you. So why did that matter, I guess? Why did that sentence really stand out for you?
It spoke to me deeply, right? And part of that was in preparing for this, reflecting on if I had the opportunity to go back and speak to younger Anthony, right? Personally, professionally, what would I say to him? And there's a couple of things, right? Focus on the journey, not the destination. And I had some great coaches and mentors in my career that helped drive me that way. But as a young, aggressive, hungry, first or second year employee, like, you're focused on the next job a lot of times, right? And by that, I mean title, without necessarily focusing on the journey. And so when I saw Dion throw up that slide, it was quite funny but it resonated well. It reminded me, that we need to focus there's no linear career path. There's no the idea that I'm a vice president now, and so next year I will be a senior vice president, and then I'll be a super duper senior vice president. Like, it's ridiculous, right? Like, I don't know. Mohawk Global might decide to broker freight to the moon, right? And maybe I'll lead the moon guys, right? Maybe I'll be on the moon team at that point. I don't know where the business is going. I don't know where the company is going. So to put myself in a box and say, in 1 year, I want to be X, Y, and Z, that can be demotivating. It can be frustrating. And it can also cause you to focus on the destination and not the journey, right? And so what I really go back to myself and say is focus on the opportunities you're given to accumulate skills that will help you grow no matter what job appears in front of you, right? We don't know how Mohawk Global will be structured in 3 years, right? But I do know for the young employees coming up that communication is going to be extremely valuable. There's not going to be a job where having great communication skills is going to be like, no, don't worry about that, right? Understanding our business, right? Understanding the nuance of our business, financial acumen, right? And I could draft out a list of 10 skill sets that no matter what role you're in, if you focus on filling those buckets, you'll be prepared for whatever opportunity comes your way as the organization you're with evolves or your life evolves, right? And then on top of that, I think really a reminder to focus on your health, your mental well-being, and overall well-being, and your family. I think that those things can get overlooked early in a career. I'm a guy who's paying the piper right now for some neglect I put on myself, and trying to hit the gym again and things like that, right? But making sure to take care of yourself physically and mentally. At the end of the day, you're your own greatest asset, and we've only got one ride around this lifetime, and so to make the most of it, stop and smell the roses and enjoy it.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today and being a part of TMSA. Some updates about what's going on at TMSA so that you know if you don't know, but everyone else watching. So we already recognize our Purpose Award winners, our Trailblazers, our Rising Stars, but at the Executive Summit, which I will talk about in 1 second, we do recognize our Mountain Mover. So that's your top sales, top marketing people in the space. So we are accepting applications now through August 2nd. So you still have about a month to get those nominations in. And we'll announce them at the opening cocktail reception at Executive Summit, which will be October 10th through 11th in Hoboken, New Jersey at the W Hoboken. Really, really excited about what we're doing at this year's Executive Summit. So right now, TMSA is collecting our surveys for our benchmarking study. That's something that we do just in this space, sales and marketing stats, what's going on, what people keep in-house, what people outsource, how they set up their sales team, what are their budgets, all of those types of things. And myself and our research partner, Path Growth, will be presenting at conference about what that actually means, because I think a lot of times we get data and then we're like, and what does that mean for me? So we'll do some of that stuff. We're going to have a speaker talking about sustainability. We're going to have facilitated conversations about a few different things going on. So hope to see everybody in Hoboken in October. And the last thing, if you enjoyed listening to all the things Anthony talked about and feel like you also have insight to share with our community, please be a guest on our show. You can scan, I did it right. I always put my finger I always like them over here. But On the Move was designed to be able to shine a light on our awesome TMSA members and what you guys are doing and what you guys are thinking about the market. So we want to have all of you on. So please apply. We will also have the link in the show notes in case you are listening and not watching us and you can't scan the codes. So thank you so much for being on the show today, Anthony. I had a great time talking to you as always, and so much to think about with what's going on in the industry today and what will be coming tomorrow. So thank you so much.
I enjoyed it thoroughly. I appreciate the opportunity. If anybody wants to reach out, connect, talk a little bit deeper about what's going on, I'm always available. And thank you. This was a lot more fun than I thought it would be.
Oh, I don't know how I feel about that. You should always think it's fun.
I was a little nervous, okay, but you were an excellent host, and you got me through it.
Well, that is my job, so I hope that you did that. Really feel that way. And for anyone thinking about them coming on the show, take those words to mind. It is. I do send questions ahead of time too, so you are
well prepared. Well prepared.
But